If you're using Azure Service Endpoints thinking your traffic is private, I need to stop you right now because your data is still hitting public IP addresses, and that might be a compliance violation waiting to happen. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Network Ninja Cloudcast. I'm your host, and today I've got my favorite curious developer back with me.
Hey, okay, you've got my attention with that opener. I literally set up service endpoints last week thinking I was being security conscious.
Perfect timing then, because today we're going to break down exactly what's happening under the hood with both service endpoints and private endpoints, and trust me, the architecture difference is going to surprise you.
So here's my confusion. I wanted to connect my virtual machine to Azure storage without going over the public internet. I enabled a service endpoint, and my team lead said that's not actually private. What am I missing?
This is the number one misconception I see. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're sending a letter to a government building. With a service endpoint, you're still walking up to the public front entrance, but you're wearing a special badge that says I'm from the trusted neighborhood. The building still has its public address. Everyone can see the building exists, but your badge gets you expedited entry through a dedicated lane.
Okay, so the destination is still public, but I get special treatment?
Exactly right. Technically, when you enable a service endpoint on a subnet, Azure adds an optimized route to the route table. Your traffic still goes to the service's public IP address, like 52.239.something for Azure storage, but it travels over the Azure backbone network instead of the public internet. The service then checks your source subnet and says, you're allowed in.
Wait, so if I did a packet capture, I'd still see my traffic heading to a public IP?
You would. The destination IP remains public. What changes is the path and the authorization. Azure Storage, SQL Database, Key Vault, they all still expose their public endpoints. Service endpoints just give you a faster, more direct route on Microsoft's backbone and let you create service endpoint policies to restrict access.
So what's different about private endpoints then?
Now imagine, instead of walking to that public government building, they build a private office inside your gated community with its own address. That's a private endpoint. You're creating an actual network interface, a NIC, inside your VNet with a private IP from your address space. Let's say your VNet is 10.0.0.0 out of 16. Your private endpoint might get 10.0.1.5.
Oh, so the Azure service actually gets an IP address in my network?
Precisely. When you create a private endpoint for, say, a storage account named mycompany.blob.core.windows.net, Azure creates a NIC in your subnet. Then, and this is crucial, you integrate with Azure Private DNS Zones so the DNS name resolves to 10.0.1.5 instead of the public IP. Your traffic never touches a public IP address at all.
That's a huge difference. So with private endpoints, if someone outside my network tries to resolve that storage account name, what happens?
Great question. They'd still get the public IP unless you've disabled public access on the storage account, which you absolutely should do. You can set public network access to disabled in the storage account firewall settings. Now your storage is only accessible through that private endpoint.
Let me make sure I've got this. Service endpoints are like a VIP fast pass to a public venue. Private endpoints are like having the venue open a branch office inside my private building.
That's a solid analogy, and it holds up technically. Service endpoints modify routing and authorization but keep public IPs. Private endpoints create actual private network interfaces with RFC 1918 addresses in your VNet.
What about the security implications? Why would I ever choose service endpoints then?
Cost and simplicity. Service endpoints are free and take about 30 seconds to enable. Private endpoints cost around $9 per month each, plus data processing charges of 1 cent per gigabyte. If you have 50 services, that adds up. Also, service endpoints are great for scenarios where you just need to restrict access to specific subnets and you're okay with a public endpoint existing.
What's the biggest mistake people make with these?
Two things. First, enabling service endpoints and thinking they've achieved zero trust network isolation. They haven't. The public endpoint still exists. Second, creating private endpoints but forgetting the DNS configuration. Without proper private DNS zone integration, your applications will still resolve to public IPs and bypass the private endpoint entirely.
So let me recap. Service endpoints give me optimized routing over Azure's backbone to public IPs with subnet-based access control, and they're free. Private endpoints give me actual private IPs in my VNet, true network isolation, but cost money and require DNS configuration.
Nailed it. My pro tip? For anything handling sensitive data, PII, financial records, healthcare information, use private endpoints and disable public access. For internal tools and dev environments, service endpoints might be perfectly fine.
This clears up so much confusion. I'm going back to review our production setup today.
That's it for today's episode. If this saved you from a security misconfiguration, hit that like button and subscribe for more cloud networking deep dives.
And share this with your team, because I guarantee someone on your team has this same confusion.
Thanks for watching the Network Ninja Cloudcast. See you in the next one.